Cashrules. My name is Nick Foley. I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Gilmore. What's going on, my man?
I am ready to do this, brother.
You're ready to do this. How's your week going? It's now, as this goes, we are past midweek. I don't like to give the exact date because I don't want people knowing what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I know that we're out there. They see your smiling mug. They see my smiling mug, but they don't need to know what we're doing at the time, unless they're watching live, of course. Because if you are on all the different platforms, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes. We're everywhere you need us to be. We're there. So other than that, how are things going for the week so far, Nick?
Today's been a rough start, actually, because last night I had a meeting. It went a little bit late. And I was talking with you actually on the phone. And I had to let you go because I was just going into that meeting. And we finished. I'm like, oh, let's have a glass of wine. So a glass of wine ended up, into a couple of bottles of wine. And, the morning comes pretty quickly.
Hold on a sec. Right? We're going to explain this. It's going to be great. But let's dissect this. I have a glass of wine with my wife most weeks. We have a glass or two. But it never turns into two bottles. And how you just kind of said that, you're like, oh, you glass of wine, kind of turned into two bottles. So let's dissect that a little bit. So first of all, what kind of wine do you drink, Nick? I think our listeners want to know that.
Dry white. So
white
Pinot Grigio. So anything dry. But I'm easy. I'm not a fancy wine snob or anything. I've taken like a couple courses on wine tasting just to whatever, know a little bit or be able to fit in with some people, but ultimately I don't really give a fuck.
Clearly it's good for business though. I mean, you had a business meeting, you went from one glass of wine to two bottles. So walk us through it. All right, you got done the wine and then you wake up tomorrow. Is that what you're saying? You wake up today and it was a bit foggy or what?
That was certainly a bit foggy, man. And you got to get up. You got to get up, and this is like you can if you're going to be a man at night, you got to be a man in the morning, right? I love that saying. And anybody can go out and party and drink and be a fucking hero at the bar or wherever, and then be a stain on the fucking couch all day and lay there and do nothing, right? But it's good to let loose. It's good to have a few glasses of wine or two bottles or whatever the odd time. But if you're going to fucking tie into her, you got to get up and you got to go to work. And I mean, ultimately 7 days a week, you don't really have that opportunity to sleep in or to take it easy. So yeah, I got up and had a fucking packed day. I had appraisals, 3 fucking appraisals I had to go through with. That was a fucking nightmare. It was freezing out. And then what else? Well, I opened the store, so I was there super, super early. And then I had to come here for this. But I'm happy to fucking be here. I'm happy to have the opportunity. And I'm happy to see your face, brother.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, brother. So how'd the appraisals go? I mean, you don't have to get into the numbers, but was it successful on your part?
I mean, it's good. It's good. I always like to walk the appraisals with the appraiser because, you can, and this is actually, listen up, people, because little tip, Nick Gilmore tidbit is if you are going to have an appraiser do appraisals on rental property or your place, walk it with them. Go through the house with them. Tell them the upgrades. Tell them what's been done to the property because it's going to add value. And if you did the roof and you're not there to tell them that you did the roof, well, that doesn't go into the appraisal. Is it going to add a shit ton of value? Probably not a ton, but it's going to add a bit. Mm-hmm. And 100 bits is, more than a little.
Yeah, no, I like that. 100 bits is more than a little. But speaking of that, the reason why I kind of baited you with that question, Nick, because I knew you would give our listeners some great insight as you did. One of the things that I heard a great story. One of the things that a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, did is that he provided the appraiser with a full market value kind of printout of all the stuff that he did and gives it to the appraiser. And it was interesting because he gave it to the appraiser and he said to me the exact same thing you did. He goes, I walked around with them. I said, well, what if you get an appraiser that says I don't need the full market value printout, and you're not going to walk around and need any of that. He goes, I fire them. And here's what he means by that. He says they're not working for, like, you're hiring them to come in, or the people are hiring them to come in. Like, you don't need to, go to the first appraiser that just walks through your door. You want to build that relationship in some capacity. So he said he gave them the printout of all the different things that he did. And at the total, he, in his mind, had it appraised at 985. And so I'm listening to the story, and he said, I walked around with them. I gave them the fair market value from all the, all the upgrades I did, and things like that, the animations as they called, and it came back at 950. Like, he goes, hey, I'll take it. He's like, I bought the property, several years ago for like 300 or 400 or whatever. So my point is exactly what you're saying. Show the appraiser that you're doing the work. That here's exactly what it cost me for the roof. Here's the deck I put on. Here's the I don't know, whatever I built. You know what I mean? The garage, whatever it was. So and then to go around with them and let them know, because it would get lost in translation if you don't.
And they will they look at comparables in the area. So if yours is a bungalow and a bungalow just sold for 500 grand, 2 doors down, and they're fairly similar, but you think yours is worth 600 grand, you need to articulate that to the appraiser. Well, why is it different? Why is it better? Why is it worth $100,000 more? And if you're not there, then you can't do that. So get your fucking ass in there and do the work. Get in there and learn. If nothing else, ask questions, because then you learn.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. Well, especially today too, right? With what you're paying a square foot. I mean, construction for a square foot for, like wood frame is what, between 220 and 280 a square foot, and concrete is 350.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah. And concrete is what, 350, 375 a square fout if you're anyways. If you're lucky, at least. You don't know that stuff going in, and all of a sudden, you're not asking the right questions and getting the answers that you need in order to do your due diligence and put it on a spreadsheet and go from there. Like, you're behind the game before. Because I tell you what, it's a huge shock to the system when you're pricing out something and then a professional tells you, like, no, I can't do it for any less than, $30 more than what you're thinking. You know what I mean? And then you're already behind the 8 ball. So anyway, no, that's some great stuff. And I agree with that. I heard a similar expression to the one that you used. If you're going to soar like an eagle at night, or if you're going to hoot like an eagle at night, or if you're going to hoot like an owl, if you're going to hoot like an owl, you better soar like an eagle in the morning. And, it's such a true. It's kind of like similar to what you're saying. And I put a lot of pride in this. I'm going to ask you a question. What kind of stock do you put in the unseen hours? Right? The unseen hours are the hours that, you're doing when you're out with the appraiser today, when you're opening the store, when there's nobody there, there's no fanfare, there's no one saying, great job, Nick. Yeah. There's nobody listening, right? What kind of stock do you put into the unseen hours?
99.999999 repeated % of your success, my success, anyone's fucking success comes from the unseen hours. It's almost all of it, because it's the behind the scenes work that builds the foundation for everything that you see on the front lines, right? So all that, seeing the appraisers, setting up the meetings, going to the meetings, talking to contractors, thinking of the ideas that are going to be in the retail locations, all this stuff. This is the foundation of your businesses. And without that, you have no business. So almost everything.
The harder you work, right? The luckier you get. And that's what.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's so true, right? And I find that, I mean, I think I read it in a book somewhere or whatever, but it's the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I feel the more you surround yourself with that, and that's a big thing too, before we move on to what's going on in the news and things like that. Like, I always find the more that you surround yourself with people that are in it, the smarter you become. Like, I know over the last several months that you and I have, become friends, and me just asking you questions. And that's how our friendship began. I became smarter in real estate because of things that, that you're doing, things that, my other mentors are doing, and things my brother's doing, like, people are building, doing things, and just asking intelligent questions, right? Surrounding yourself with people. I know you speak very highly of, like, some investors that you're working with, but they're also serve as your mentors as well, right? Can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of that, and how that's actually exponentially moves your growth path so much quicker because you invested the time into seeking out mentors?
Think of it this way, okay? So let's pretend like my closest friend group was, a bunch of guys, worked good jobs, made 150 grand a year, and had weekends off. Okay. If that's what I'm exposing myself to, then I'm setting the level of success and the bar for success at that 150 grand a year. I'm not saying that that's peanuts, because, to some people that's great and it's good money. But what I am saying is that if you surround yourself with people who are making $1 million a year, or 2 million, or 5 million, or 10 million, or a billion, whatever, or they're building things and they're procuring assets. If you're surrounded by those people, then your bar goes up, and that's your ceiling, because now you're exposing yourself to the realities of some of these guys' success. And if you don't expose yourself, like if I stayed in Belleville for my entire life, it's a small town, right? There's not a shitload of stuff going on because it's a small town. I'm not talking shit about it, but there's just not a lot going on there, right? There's awesome small businesses and stuff like that, but there's not massive corporations that are, really moving and shaking. So if I stayed there for my entire life and never exposed myself to anywhere else or any other people outside of, that area, well, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. And I mean, you need to surround yourself with the right people. Number one, they've got to be ambitious as fuck. Number two, and, never set your bar like too low, and trust in yourself and trust in your abilities. Never sell yourself short, ever, 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 because each and every one of us, and you guys and people listening, we're all capable of a lot more than we think. You just got to find it within yourself, light the fire, and then tell yourself, okay, I'm going to fucking execute, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there, and work harder than everybody else.
Well, yeah, and I've heard that, right? Like if you seek it, you will find it, and it will find you, right? So you surround yourself with, like you said, with people that are raising the bar, constantly pushing the boundaries of growth. Then you're gonna through osmosis, through being around them, you're gonna put yourself at another level. So lots of good insight there. We're off to a rocking start, man. You were lit up at the beginning of the day, and you're giving our listeners your spewing fire here right now. So let's get into what's going on in society, part of the catch up. I'm interested, man, and I know that this is a bit of a, could kind of, I don't know. We'll see how it rolls, because a lot of people have a lot of different opinions and viewing opinions on this freedom rally that's going on with the truckers and their move on Ottawa. And I'd like to get, as a small business owner, Nick, as it pertains to that, I'd like to get your insights on your thoughts and and where you stand with it, because I know that there's a lot of polarizing views on both sides of the aisle here.
So first of all, number one, the first thing I'll say, without any big movement, so without any sort of explosion of something, there will be no change. Our government will not change. They won't do anything. And they're all liars. Every single one of them. I know a couple of people from our hometown who are politicians who I do trust. And that would be like 1% of all politicians in Canada. The rest of them are just liars. It's so sickening to listen to lies from everyone and just cover-ups, and it's disgusting. And I mean, without any big movement, there will be no change. I have huge respect for truckers. They have one of the hardest jobs. They bring us what we need at the stores, our materials to job sites. They look after so many things. They keep our economy rolling. And, I think it's so important. And I don't know a ton about this freedom rally or, I've done a little bit of research on it, but what I do know is it's against, we're sick and tired of mandates. So it's not vaccine, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, whatever. It's mandates. And I think what they're trying to say is, okay, Canada, time to open back up for business and let's start making some fucking money. And I can get behind that 100%. I support what they're doing. It sucks. It's an inconvenience to people on the road. It's an inconvenience to people who live in Ottawa, but it is what it is. These things need to happen to make change. And, I can respect that 100%. And actually, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in the States. And she was saying, her parents live in Florida. She was saying that there's huge support for this rally in the States. Like, people have Canadian flags on their cars and, they're behind it 100%. And that's something that I thought was really cool because, you always hear this difference between the US and Canada, where you think the US thinks we're a bunch of fucking pussies and we think they're a bunch of yahoos. And, we're so alike. And, just meeting people from down there and talking to people, it's refreshing, but, we're all in this. As cliche as this is, we are all in this together, and let's just open the fucking country up and get business back in business.
I think that a lot of interesting points there, Nick, and I think we could actually probably spend the whole podcast talking about it. You know what I mean? Because it's that polarizing of an issue. One of the things that I will say is that, we certainly, as a democratic society, have the right to assembly and the right to protest. My hope is that everybody that's doing it is doing it safely, and that the 2 or 3% of everybody that's down there doing their protests, that they're not pushing their agenda and being violent, because the last thing you want to see is a beautiful place like Ottawa and Canada be the subject to senseless violence and God forbid deaths and things like that. So people's right to assembly, people's right to protest is certainly their right in a democratic nation. So my hope is this comes to a swift conclusion, whatever way it goes. So good insights on.
Just like with that, okay, Justin Trudeau all of a sudden ends up with fucking he's been exposed to COVID. Yeah. Like, yeah. I'm not saying I'm liberal. I'm not saying I'm conservative. I'm not saying fuck all about politics. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, politicians can ram everything I say up their ass, but give me a fucking, like, this guy is such a pansy. And I hate to even go to there, right? Like, I hate to go there, but I'm so sick and fucking tired of him being just lying. Like, stop lying. It's so transparent that he doesn't give a fuck about anyone. Right?
Well, yeah. And one of the things that I would say is that the last election probably had something to do with that, right? Like, I mean, he got a minority government again, and when they were anticipating a landslide win. So, whether your views on Justin, your view on Justin on Trudeau, you love him or hate him or in between, you're certainly right when it comes to politicians and accountability and things like that. They're just I heard a great quote from Bill Clinton, and it said that he kept all the promises he intended to keep. Right. And I was watching this documentary about, the campaign many years ago now, but I just thought it was really interesting because as a politician, like a lot of people, and I'm not a politician, I never will be, but a lot of people, and we both know politicians that, like you said, that are great and that do their thing. But again, even them, they have their agenda, they got to push forward. Right. So, and as us, as citizens, we are, we're at the not mercy, but we're there and they're governing us, and they're saying, "Oh, we got your best interest in hand." But there's a lot of businesses that are decimated because of these lockdowns and mandates. And my hope is that these businesses that are really effective, the small businesses like yours and my brothers, and myself and things like that, like that they do come out of this in some, in a good way. But not only just come out of it. It's not, you don't get into business just to come out of stuff. You know what I mean? Like my hope is that, we all get back into these restaurants and gyms and things like that, and these small business owners and that are forced to close and or reduce seatings and all that stuff. Like, we go back in groves because they deserve to make a comfortable living as well. They took that leap and here we are. Right. So,
like it's so tough to get into business, and it's so hard to start, and you make no money at the start. Like maybe some do, or if you're, a second or third generation business owner, when it's already going. But if you were actually somebody who's starting a business, talk to anybody who has started a business from scratch. You don't make any money at the start. You make enough money to pay the bills, but you're not swimming in fucking cash. So we need to fucking get these restaurants open, for fuck's sakes, Canada. Like, we live in the greatest country in the world. It's very frustrating, as you can see, like, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you got these figurehead politicians up standing in front of us telling lies. Yeah. Like,
well, like, and if we're gonna collect or protect our hospitals, we got to protect it. Well, we need to make a better system. Then we've had, not that it's going to be changed in 24 months, but the reality of it is a lot more. A lot more could have been done up till to now, instead of just standing there being like, I love our nurses and I love our our healthcare. So we got to protect our hospitals. Yeah, we get that, but what are we doing to make our hospitals better? Like, are we building more beds and bringing more people in? Because the reality of it is that's not the case, right? Like, yeah, you can have all the beds in the world, but I read somewhere the other day, it's like, you can have all the beds in the world, but if you don't have nurses being able to mandate it or being able to man it or not man it, what's the word I'm looking for? Attend it. Then all you have is a bed. You know what I mean? And we need to, they need to put some money into some infrastructure. But I mean, you know what? We're all armchair politicians, Nick. So let's move on, because I didn't run for a seat. You did. And I guess on the podcast, we can have as many opinions as we want because it's our podcast. All right. So let's get into question period. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, brother. All right, we've got every week, and we tell this, and Nick and Ash there do a great job of putting different questions, or putting it out to our reader or our listeners and our viewership, questions that they may have for you to ask, or for me to ask you and you to answer, so hopefully between the two of us we'll be able to chime in and shop local. Yeah, exactly right. Here's my shirt. It says nothing, but and so it's important that and we love that we get these questions, and some of these are really high level. So let's get into it. So
hey, wait, first tell about your wardrobe. Are you willing to share about your wardrobe? Because I think that's I took that from you. I haven't fully implemented it, but share that, because I think that could be beneficial to some people.
Yeah, sure. I could wrap it up in like one sentence, but I really need to kind of give you give a backstory to it. Right. So, not too long ago, I think it was about probably about 5 years ago. Well, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago now, man. I decided that I needed to, take the thinking out of, putting together my wardrobe. And so before COVID, I used to travel all the time. And my thought was, I need to get down to, so I can leave my brand, so I can leave or have more bandwidth for things that have interest me and have value for me. So I decided about I guess it probably is 3 or 4 years ago now, that I only wear black. And so I will wear white shirts from time to time, but black or white shirts, that's it. And before you add us and you see a picture of me at home I'll wear my hoodies and stuff like that. But I very seldom do I go out in public with anything other than just a black shirt on. And the reason being is because, when I was traveling, I just wanted to make it real simple for myself. And I know black goes with everything. I've got different blazers that I put on with different shirts. And of course I wear different colored pants and things like that, but I only wear black shirts, usually black hoodies, black sweaters, colored shirts, things like that. And it is for that very reason, man. It's to take the thinking out of it. And a lot of people are like, well, that's such restrictive learning, or such restrictive living. And I would actually say it's the opposite. I have so many more freedoms, not just because of my wardrobe, that bleeds into different aspects of my life, but I have a lot more freedoms because I don't waste what I call time looking at, what am I going to wear today? Does this match that? And when I'm packing, it's just, I know I can grab 3 or 4 black shirts and put a couple blazers in there, and I've got a wardrobe for a week. Right. So yeah, it's kind of how it started, mostly when I was traveling. But now that I just, I don't travel as much anymore. Like for me, it's a convenience thing. I get up in the morning, I know I'll get a black shirt and it'll go with, whatever pants I'm wearing for the most part. So I just, I don't buy clothes that don't match with black, which basically everything does. So yeah, and it just takes the thinking out of the game, man. Like I can concentrate on other things and not worry about what the wardrobe is, because I know it's going to be black and everybody looks sick in black. No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So black or white. I think I have like, I might have 2 or 3 white shirts. My wife tries to sneak in stuff, man. Like she'll buy me like a gray shirt or a red shirt that I'll wear around the house or something. But I will never do a speech, or very seldom will I teach or go to a business meeting in anything other than a black shirt. That's for sure.
Love it.
That was what you were talking about, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, these little things, these small little things that you implement into your day are game changers, because that's one thing. Yeah. Streamline 3 fucking things in your day so that you just know this is how it's going to fucking be.
Yeah. And I control that.
And it changes everything. It changes. It focuses up here and it tunes you into what is important.
Yeah.
Right. So it gets rid of the noise. You need to get the noise out of here. All the bullshit and all the stuff that's happening around you and people and gossip and bullshit.
Yeah.
Get it out of here and fucking focus in on what's important. And when you can do that, I fucking promise you guys that it will change everything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that, and I can control that, right? Like I know I can focus, like I can, out of all the things in the world, like I know that when I get up in the morning, I can drink the water. I know that I can wear the black shirts. I can pack the lunches that there's some things in your life that you can control. And when you do that, you're uber focused. So you just become, next thing you know, people are like, oh, I can't, like, you guys, you've come a long way. You've done a lot of things. And you're just like, it's just a made up everyday ethos of my life, So, and there's
natural progression.
That's it. Exactly. So, all right. So how do I raise capital and syndicate a deal? So this is a really good high level core program, man. I really like this because, question, because, lots of people, I know yourself, most of the buys you do now, just from what I know, you usually don't just do it out of like, taking equity out of one home and putting it into a build or something like that. Usually you're raising capital. So this would be a really interesting question for you to go, and then maybe talk to our viewers a little bit about syndication, because although I know you know what it is, that would be good. Some people just might not know what that means at home.
So syndication, we'll start with that. Syndication is when you raise capital to deploy against something. So like if I'm syndicating a real estate deal, then I'm raising money from, me and you and Ash and my brother. We all put money in and then we buy a multi-unit apartment building. So I syndicated that deal. How you do it. This comes back to, and I made a fucking video on this. It's about networking. Networking is key in building your relationships with people who have money or who have access to money, right? This is so important because once you meet these people, you can reuse these relationships to benefit you. And I don't mean that in like, we're talking about money. I'm not saying to manipulate people and stuff like that. I mean, you can use these people to help grow yourself and grow your portfolio, your real estate portfolio. And once you expand this network and once you meet the right people, and it doesn't happen overnight, it takes a long time. And you also need to know what the fuck you're doing. Like you can't go to Johnny Money and say, hey, I want $1 million because I want to fucking build this construction project. Well, he's going to say, what's your experience? So educate yourself, broaden your network, talk to the right people. And I mean, just always be on the hunt, always be looking, always be a good person, because people aren't going to give you money if you're a dick, right? Or arrogant or anything. So be a good person. Network to meet people and network genuinely. Don't just network to get money. Okay? So don't, I'm meeting somebody. oh, they don't have any money. Okay, next, because you know what I mean? There's this thing. you can do a project, right? Two people can do a project and they can both finish the project, okay? But how many dead bodies are there on each project? It could be the same project. One guy could do the project, get to the end, not piss anyone off, not stress the team out, not do this, not do that. And one guy could just be a complete maniac, making last minute decisions, yelling at team members, pissing off contractors. Well, that guy is leaving a lot of dead bodies because he's not going to be able to work with those people again. So when you're networking, the same thing applies, right? You network genuinely, you meet great people. If it doesn't fit what you're looking for, you don't just flush that person, right?
No, I think there's some lots to unpack here, Nick. So walk us through like a bit of a deep dive. Like, how does the percentages work, and what are people usually lending on as far as interest rates, and talk a little bit about maybe a deal, like a little bit of a deep dive on a deal that you've it doesn't have to be one that you use. It could be one that you're just using as an example, but like just to get people, because I think that's all really great insight about the personnel and surrounding yourself with like the good people and networking in that capacity. Talk a little bit about the numbers and logistics and like the steps that it takes to raise that capital. So you come to me and you want to raise, let's say $2 million, and you want me to come in with, you pick a number. What's the interest rate on something like that usually, and how does that usually get structured?
Well, I mean, it's dependent per deal, but one of my favorite things of all time, and something I've talked to you in length about, is a vendor take back. So the first thing I'll ask on so many deals is, will they hold 20% or will they hold 35%? Because if they're going to hold 35% on a commercial deal, chances are the bank's going to come in with 65%. So if they'll hold a 35% VTB at 6% interest only, which is pretty common, and they can defer some tax. So ultimately they're going to make more money by selling it to you and make a little money in the interim on their money that's, deployed and put to work. But you can buy it for no money down, right? So this is one way of raising capital. So for example, that apartment building I sent you that you had a look at, it was worth $2 million. So if the owner or owners or whatever corporate entity that owns that building, if they were willing to do a VTB for 20% and TD Bank is willing to come in and lend us 80%. Okay, so the owners, they'll hold $400,000. We'll get 1.6 from TD Bank. We'll pay 6% interest only on the 400,000 until we can pay that back, which is typically on a refinance in 5 years. Hopefully the asset's appreciated. You've paid it down, and then there's enough room and equity to take that vendor take back out. That's one way to get into a deal with no capital. Okay, it's most common, and it benefits both sides.
Is the bank not going to ask for any kind of like capital from you?
I mean, there's this saying, and it's skin in the game.
That's what I mean.
How much skin in the game? There's 5 C's to credit. We can get into that another day, but not always.
Okay.
Not always, because you're going to have things to pay. You're going to have to pay your land transfer tax. You're going to have to pay your lawyer fees. You're going to have to pay a bunch of other shit. So, at the end of the day, maybe you'll have to put in a little bit, but you're certainly not going to have to inject $400,000 into the deal.
Yeah.
So I guess like the vendor take back, most common. And I mean, it benefits both sides. So both sides win. And typically that's when you see a good deal for yourself, is when the other side wins a little bit as well.
Well, and that's it too. I mean, there's going to be, there's nothing wrong with taking back like, a VTB on 20% of a $2 million evaluation. And then, it's mailbox money for you. So you're going to get you're going to get 80% of that. And then you're going to go to the mailbox and pick up, 6% every, and that's a metaphor, I know, but like pick up 6% on your money for 5 years, right? And you're paying less property gains tax. You're going to be, getting this like monthly influx of cash of 6% of 2 million of the value every month, right?
Understand who's selling. You need to go every deal I go into. I always try and find out. Let's say I'm the purchaser. I try to find out about the seller because it allows me to negotiate better because I know what motivates them. If they're 80 years old or if they're 70 years old, let's say, a vendor take back is a lot more attractive to that person than a 40-year-old hungry, ambitious person because they're probably going to want to take all that capital and deploy it elsewhere. But if you know these things going into deals, it equips you to be able to handle the negotiation. And oftentimes you'll see, like, you'll ask, and this is another thing about realtors, very fucking important. If you have a realtor representing you and you say, I need you to find the answers out to these questions, you need to know damn well that they're actually doing it. Because sometimes the agent and the other agent will get talking back and forth and they're like, well, he probably won't. And the question doesn't even get to the fucking seller. So then he comes back and says, well, no, VTB. No. And they probably, the other realtor doesn't even know what the fuck a VTB is.
So when you're doing a VTB on, just like for our listeners at home, when you're doing a VTB and say this guy, so say out of $2 million, the guy does a 20% VTB, so that's 40 or 400K. He's paying 6% on the 400K.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's so that's good for them too, right? Because you're looking at it, you're like, you just got an 80% influx, and now you're going to take 2,000. That's 24,000 divided by 12. That's going to be $2,000 a month of just cash, right, coming in from you, right? And then it frees up. That gives you some wiggle room as well because you're not going to be, you don't have to raise as much capital, and it works out pretty well with everybody all around, right? You're making more money in the back end. So 5 years, right? 5 years from that, add 24 times 5, right? So you're going to be, you're making an extra 120,000 on what you wouldn't be making before. You're going to get all that money back plus another 120,000 for, doing a VTB. Here's a question before going to the next one, Nick. What's the highest percentage of a vendor take back have you ever seen before? I'm talking not interest. I'm talking about like the vendors like, I'll take back, this case we talk about 20%. Have you seen anything higher? Like what's the highest?
100%.
You've seen a 100% vendor take back?
Yeah, they just hold the mortgage.
Yeah.
No bank.
Yeah, which is good. So basically for our listeners, just to sum it up, correct me if I'm wrong, they're collecting cash every month until that's it for 5 years.
Yep, until you can take them out with a mortgage.
And usually you're going to negotiate a 6% kind of interest rate on that, right? And so they're going to get an extra 6% on. So if it's 2 million, they're going to get an extra 6% on that, and they're holding on to it until you take them out on it. You refinance.
And you can write up the contract so that it's like, if you miss one payment, so let's say I own a building and I'm selling it to you and I'm going to hold the mortgage on it, and you're going to pay me 6% interest only for 5 years. But in the contract, I can say fully, if you miss one payment, I take it back.
Yeah.
I make the rules.
Yeah.
Right. So if you miss one payment or you're late one day, see ya. I'll take all that money that you've paid, plus I'll take the fucking building back. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, typically that's a little bit for our listeners. They're like, why aren't more people doing that? Well, a lot of the times it's the seller may not want to have that on the option. That may not be their thing. And B, it's a lot higher interest rate. You're looking at what, 6 to 9% when something like that happens, Nick?
Yeah.
As opposed to 3%, right? Or 2%.
And you don't pay the mortgage down. That's the other thing. So, like when it's interest only, it's interest only. There's no principal payment. So if he's holding $2 million and you're paying 6% interest only, in 5 years, you still owe him $2 million. So you better hope that the building's appreciated 20% so that your equity takeout is going to have that 20% built in. Otherwise, you're going to be injecting money into the deal.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. And the reality of it for that is, and chances are, I mean, you tell me, you're the like, you've got a lot of input on this, Nick, but like the reality is it will appreciate, but it'll appreciate. Like the fact is that you're going to have to do, something to, I mean, with time, it'll just appreciate naturally as well, possibly over time, but it may not be in 5 years, like the same influx that you're hoping for. Right. So it might appreciate over, it might not be the same 20% that you're going to get out of it if it doesn't appreciate to the level that you want it to. Now, how do you do that? You add things, like you said, you redo the roof, you redo some of the units, you do the things that you need to, so that when people are looking through, you maybe add some animations here and there. But when people are walking through, they realize this is a really good property, and it's going to be the trick is when you have something like that, like all things, you want it to appreciate, but you really need it to, because you're not paying any principal down. With your mortgage that you have in the house that you're in, the one that I'm in, I'm paying principal and and interest, of course, but there's principal. When the person holds 100% vendor take back, they're paying it all, or you're paying it all in 5 years or 3 years, or whatever it is that you come to terms with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, good insights there, man. That's what I want to get into the nitty, the nuts and bolts of it, as they say. Okay, next question. In the early days of your business, when did you know when to add people to support, accounting, marketing, things like that? And let's talk about the numbers when it comes to that, man.
So there's two approaches, and we touched on this a couple of weeks ago. There's two approaches you can take. And I'll say one is the Nick Gilmore approach, and one is my brother's approach. So my approach is, I mean, and this question is in the early days, but it should be, in business in general, because it really doesn't change until you're so big that you have so much money, it doesn't matter. I would implement people to execute ideas because let's say I was going to expand. So like you're talking accounting, marketing, just growing in general. Okay. So I would plan where I want to be. Okay. And then I would implement the people necessary to operate when I'm at that point. Okay. So now I've hung a bunch of overhead, put a bunch of more overhead on the books because we've got more staff, we've got more bills, but we're not doing the business yet. So it forced me to execute and to make more money. It's not always the smartest way to do it, but it does back you into a corner where it's sink or swim. You could fire everybody, but it's not something that generally, if you hire somebody, you don't plan on firing them. So that's my approach. Look to where you want to be, structure your business so that you're able to handle business at that point, and then, execute. My brother is opposite. He likes to build business till it's almost fucking exploding. Okay. Till it's just shaking at every single fucking connection. Like you couldn't do any more business with what you have. And then he'll add an employee. So it takes off a little bit of the heat. And then when you fucking get a little bit bigger, then you add an employee, right? His is very, very, very being very conscious to the bottom line. Okay. Because you're not increasing your overhead so much, it's not as big of a risk. And ultimately you're making more money bottom line. Mine allows for quicker growth. So if you put both strategies up together, they both have pros and cons. Mine allows you to get bigger. His allows you to make more money at the start. So pick your poison.
Pick your poison. So my question is, you're in business with your brother, and I know that. And so which one do you guys use? Or do you do a bit of a hybrid, or sometimes yours, sometimes his?
Case by case.
Case by case, yeah.
Yeah, we weigh pros and cons. We talk about it. We look at the situation, and then we come to a decision. Yeah,
which is smart. I mean, I think in another podcast or another episode, we'll talk about maybe partnerships with family and stuff.
Well, it's tough. It's tough, man, because so it's such a weird dynamic because he was in a huge corporation. He's a professional engineer, worked on some of the biggest projects in the world, construction projects in the world. I'm 10 years younger. Okay. So I'm the younger brother. But then from my view, I started this business. You know, it was my baby. I was the one who got it to where it was. And then we become partners. So you can imagine the dynamic that, you know, each one of us brings to the table. But there's a mutual respect amongst us that is required when there's partners. If you don't have respect for your partners, then you shouldn't be in business with them.
Like that. You don't have respect for your partners, you shouldn't be in business with them. You're right. And that's the thing, right? And I mean, that leads you back to all the you can raise all the seed funding, all the capital in the world. But if you don't like the person that's giving it to you, that comes back to what you said earlier in the show, Nick, where it's like, you know, surround yourself with the right people, right? Surround yourself with good people that you want to be around. Like I know lots of people that have lots of money that are complete, you know, like idiots to others, right? And they may be a great partner on paper because they just injected a whole bunch of capital. But if you don't respect your partner, if you don't respect them because they treat people, or it's not worth it. Go find it somewhere else. There's lots of people that you can get along with that are making money, you know?
And a lot of the times, people who are going after their dreams, I'm not speaking about those individuals who you were talking about right there, but a lot of the time, people who are going after their dreams or going after success or going after money or going after whatever they want in life are misunderstood. And, you know, the reason being because they're focused on that. They're not focused on going out to dinner with fucking Janet and hanging out at fucking Tim Hortons with the 50 other Honda Civics, looking under the fucking hood, drinking a Bud Light. They're focused on growing their business or investing or networking with people who are billionaires. They're not looking at this other fucking bullshit that's not getting you anywhere. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all, because there's not. But if I'm out with my fucking 1990 Honda Civic at Tim fucking Hortons with 50 other fucking guys, I'm not at the fucking boardroom table with somebody talking about a fucking potential real estate deal. So pick your poison, boardroom or Honda Civic.
Right. Yeah. Outside having a Honda Civic, revving engines, or drinking 2 bottles of wine with a potential client, right? Or a partner.
Exactly. That was a $2 million transaction, by the way.
Yeah, that's
2 bottles of wine.
Yep. It's worth it.
That was $2 million.
It's worth the headache. That's my point. Because I knew who you were meeting and what you were, well, not the person, but I knew the level that you were talking at last night when we were talking. And that's my point. So what? You're going to wake up with a bit of a, maybe a bit of a headache in the morning, but you're going to get the stuff done and it's worth it. Right?
Yeah.
So
toughen up.
Exactly.
Toughen up,
that's
guys.
The point.
And
next question.
Anybody who's listening to this, sorry, but I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here. Typically, the people who are listening to this are already tough and already are hungry. That's why they're listening to this. It's not the fucking hoity-toity fucking guy who wants everything handed to him and fucking sleeps in till noon. Yeah. That's not who we're talking to, and they're probably not listening. And if you are listening and you do want to be successful, then get the fuck out of bed and go to work, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Please.
Yeah. Next one. What is one thing you wish you would have known before jumping into entrepreneurship? What's one thing you wish you would have known before jumping into entrepreneurship?
I mean, I watched my parents work and own their business. So I knew what I was getting into. So there's not really one thing that I wish I would have known, but one thing I wish everybody else would know who gets into business, who seems to not fucking understand this, is it consumes your life. It's every day. It's always here. You're always thinking about it. Okay? You're always focused. And if you're not prepared to consume your entire mind with the success of your businesses, then you, my friend, are not prepared to be an entrepreneur. If you want to fucking syndicate a fucking restaurant purchase with 20 other fucking real estate agents because you all want to fucking go in there and get drunk, that's not being an entrepreneur. That's fucking being 20 morons buying a fucking restaurant that's not even going to be able to support the fucking rent anyways. Okay? I'm talking about your purebred, grassroots entrepreneur who wants to go and fucking get it and didn't come from a whole shitload of money.
Love it. All right, now my favorite time is we wrap things up here in rant time. So let's get ready. I got one for you. So.
You know what's funny? There's a fucking plane just landed on the ice.
Really?
Yeah, right. I was showing you the water.
Yeah,
just lands right on the fucking ice. I'm watching it right now.
Nice.
Like,
didn't crash though, right? It landed, right?
Yeah, it's sitting there right now.
Yeah. Awesome.
I don't even know how thick the ice is.
Yeah, no kidding. So we're going to get into rant time. And rant time is listeners know is when I ask Nick a question that usually sets him off. So not to set him off. I don't mean to do it like that, but it's interesting because we've talked about realtors and we've talked about, not like showing up and not showing up and buying, taking 20 people to buy a restaurant, which I think was hilarious on your part to mention that. So I want to ask you a question about. I want you to off on this. Let's start with this one. What is your definition of hard work? Your definition of hard work.
How many questions are there? First of all, 2.
There was this one, and then I have one more in the hopper in the chamber for you.
My definition of hard work. Okay, here's my definition of hard work is looking at the hardest working person you know and work harder than them. So for anybody listening to this program, that's me. Okay? Nobody will outwork me. So try to. Because you can work equally as hard, but you certainly can't outwork me. It can't be done. It cannot. I listened to fucking Eric Thomas, and he's like, I'm not the smartest guy. I don't have the best ideas. I'm not. It took me 12 years to get a 4-year degree. I think I shared this morning. But the one thing you will not fucking do is you will never outwork me. Ever. Tony Robbins. Fucking, he mentions a bunch, Zig Ziglar, all these guys, you will never, ever, ever outwork me. It's impossible. And that's my approach. Hard work is working harder than everybody you know and going after what you want, obsessing over it, going after it every single day. I'm not saying that's the most healthy thing for your mental health because it's not. But to get to where you want to go, you've got to get through the struggle and you've got to get through the pain. It hurts at the start. It's hard. You've got to live. You've got to sit in the dirt and sit in the mud, like you say. And these days when they're just like, why the fuck am I doing this? But you do it anyways because pain is temporary. Success lasts forever.
All right, next part here. This is we'll end it on this one. Why is self-entitlement so prevalent in today's society?
Because we live in Canada. We live in the greatest country in the world. So we've got a whole bunch of fucking young punks who live in their fucking parents' basement, don't get a fucking job, don't leave the fucking house, don't go to school, don't do fuck all, don't contribute, don't even talk to anybody. They just text people and they think that that's fucking life. So when they come out, of the fucking house, they get eaten alive. Guys like me love guys like that because I can crumple you up in a fucking ball and set you on a desk. And there's nothing you can do about it because I'm ruthless. Okay? I have this good, it's a good saying, and it's imagine you have two cats, okay? One grows up in one household, one grows up in another household. In the one household, the cat they declaw it, they feed it, they sleep with it, never goes outside, and, lives happily. It's got all these toys. The other cat goes outside, fights raccoons, has to find food. The owners don't really take very good care of it. But there's a day when both of those cats are put into the wild. What cat is going to survive? The cat that's been fucking looked after its entire life, or the cat that's already experienced all this bullshit? The cat that's been outside is going to fucking kill the cat that's been inside. And it's the same in business. You need to be able to go through all this stuff and not be such a pansy ass. But we're in Canada, and we experience a lot of freedoms, and we experience a lot of, just we're lucky. We're lucky that we live in Canada, but we also need to stay hungry because we need to be creating business people who are going to go after it and make Canada, one of the strongest countries in the world, and a place where people want to open up business instead of keeping fucking business closed. Change this, guys. Let's fucking make everybody else scared. I don't want to fucking compete with Canadian business owners because they're fucking ruthless. Not, let's go to fucking Canada and eat their lunch because they're lazy as fuck. Change the narrative, guys.
I'm Nick Foley. He's Nick Gilmore. This Cash Rules.